Why have I quit my job? Why have I, bought a van? And why am I going to drive around the country? Well, I'm passionate about the idea that you need to be heard. And I want to stitch these stories together across the states. We're going to find the commonalities, and it's going to be really an amazing experience, and I look forward to you joining me on the jar. Hey everybody, welcome back to Mental Health Today. I'm your host, Ken Stearns. Beautiful day here in Las Vegas, Nevada. I made it out of Lake Havasu, and just a little bit of a desert drive, and before you know it, the magic of the mirage happens as you come around the mountains, and there's Las Vegas glistening in the horizon. All these money-making opportunities. Just joking aside, actually, they took this desert and they built all these casinos because people made money when they came here. Side note, all jokes aside, that video you saw was really me almost 2 years ago, kind of pontificating what I would see, or imagining what is that going to be common thread that I'll see as I travel across the U.S. interviewing people, and basically it's mental health. There's a mental health crisis. I saw it up close, or I'm seeing it up close and personal. Really, literally every day, every week, hearing people's stories, their journeys, and their struggles with life and traumas and things that happen, and how that ends up becoming something that they have to really grow with and put behind them and build upon, really, and just become better humans. It's been interesting with this program, getting a chance to interview so many different people from so many different angles that they are approaching the mental health crisis. One of the things about therapists that I have enjoyed is somebody like Dr. Greg we've got now, basically taking that basic beginning approach and then really growing and adding on to their skill set and really the tool set, and then not just being a straight therapist, sit on the couch and talk, but bringing more and more tools to the program. And I think I probably already gone too far. I better reel myself in and get the actual doctor on. Dr. Greg, thanks for being a guest. Super appreciate your taking the time out. And I'm just seeing your collection in the background there too. Very interesting. But Dr. Greg, man, welcome to the show. Thanks for being a guest. Really much appreciated.
Absolutely. Glad to be here.
Yeah, we got a little bit of a delay again, traveling across for whatever reason. Wi-Fi is still a challenge in, one of the most advanced countries in the world. We have great tech, but at times it's a little bit challenging. Dr. Greg, where do you practice? Where are you living now? Where's your practice at?
I'm in Orlando, Florida.
Okay.
Sunny Orlando, Florida, next to Mickey.
Yeah, it's sunny every day, right?
It is. Yes. Hot. Yes.
And it's hot. Tell us about
and humid.
Yeah, and sticky. It's dry now for me. It hardly feels like 110 here.
Oh my gosh.
How did you get started? Most people don't grow up and say, I want to be a therapist. How did you end up helping people?
Well, honestly, it was my 11th grade class of psychology. I'm like, this is what I want to do. And I stuck with it all throughout. I know I'm an oddity. I know. Most people are like, I have no idea what I want to do when I get into college. And then it's 2 years later, like, I still don't know. I knew what I wanted to do. In
11th grade.
11th grade, yeah.
And there
was a bump in 12th grade when I took physics. I'm like, I really like physics too, but I ended up sticking with it. So,
I mean, I could see physics being a draw.
Yeah.
There is something magic going on in physics. If you like that kind of thing, I could see being lost in that for a career.
Yeah.
But tell us a little bit about, so how did you graduated, you got started. Interesting that you knew what you wanted to do. What were those first years like?
A lot of learning for sure. A lot of mistakes, a lot of learning. Um, I guess you could say it was definitely a growing opportunity. I mean, I'm still growing. We're all growing, right?
Yeah.
We're all.
Yes.
I mean, I would consider myself a continual learner.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I'll ever stop learning. But I think those first, couple years, you're just getting your feet wet, and you think you know everything. Like, oh, I know what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna show all these people this stuff, and because this is before I had kids, I little before I got married too, and of course, I knew it all, right? But that wasn't the case. So
Turns out you didn't know it. Wait a minute. The plot thickens. It turns out
yeah,
you didn't know everything.
I didn't know everything. No, that's
Yeah,
right.
that's the beautiful part about life. And then you found out your parents weren't that stupid.
That's right.
They're not half as dumb as I thought they were. Holy cow, this life thing is kind of hard.
Yeah. You start reevaluating once you have kids. You start reevaluating once it's really interesting how it progresses, and at least in the field.
Yes.
Is you once you kind of go through it, right? You're like, oh,
yeah,
this doesn't really work. This actually works, so it's pretty neat. I have 2 grown adult children now, but yeah.
How'd you do did you do okay with
I
the
think
kids?
I think I did well. My wife and I did well. Yeah. I think we did good. Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of hard, it's easy to screw it up. And there is no manual, and we're mostly doing it when we're kids. We don't really know very much. We think we know a lot. Thank God.
Yeah.
I think that's like a self-preservation thing. You think you know more than you actually do. Otherwise, you wouldn't really actually go get married, have kids, and go start doing that stuff in your 20s.
Yeah.
Only foolish people do that. And,
True.
Or people, and then we don't know. And then we find out later. I mean, that is one of the interesting things of talking to people is the stories of what it was like growing up with parents who were kids, and the mistakes that we make and the impact that has on people.
Yeah.
One of the things we talked about was your length of time, 25 years, a long time in any field. And for sure there must be I would hope there are some big changes in the industry. Maybe take us through some of the things you've seen that have changed since you started. And we talked a little bit about what do we got to do to kind of get ahead of this curve, this tsunami. It feels like a tsunami.
Yeah.
And maybe, I think I said in the chat to you before, is maybe it's just me. I'm misunderstanding that there isn't a crisis. Maybe it's just because I'm paying attention to it. So I guess it's like, do you feel things are different? Is there really a crisis? And how have things changed? And I'll let you just kind of go on a little tear for a bit.
Okay. All right. Well, I will say that there was a crisis, and I would say it's more of a pandemic now, even after COVID. And I'll talk about that in a minute, why.
Okay.
But as far as like going from 25 years ago to today, I mean, there are a lot of changes. I mean, you think about the stigma of mental health, right? Stigma, there was a lot of stigma back then. There was a lot of blame, what's wrong with these people, maybe looking down upon them. There was a lot of that, and whether it be in the community, whether it be even in places of worship, people didn't know how to react to, people that maybe had major depression or bipolar or anxiety. It's, oh, well, I don't know. So that was one thing. And now I think that there's a lot more support. There's a lot more support for mental health, for wanting to get someone help. I think that's a really good outcome, I think, is that growth that we've had as a society and understanding that mental health is really vital for us. Another one really is when you look at cultures, there are some cultures that look down upon mental health. And so it's all, we're going to keep it in the family, don't go see a therapist, don't go do this. And I think now you're seeing a lot of these same cultures that are now taking advantage of therapists and stuff like that, and say, you know what, maybe we do need to go see somebody. There's a lot of what I thought was really neat was there's a lot of creative modalities that are being utilized now. I think, traditionally it was that, psychotherapy, sitting down, talk therapy, medication, send them to a psychiatrist, stuff like that. But now there's so many things that not just deal with your mind, but also with your body. Right? You've got sensory motor therapy, you've got polyvagal therapy, you've got play therapy, sand play therapy, all of this stuff behind you. Those are all my figurines. I have 2 bookshelves full of figurines. I have 6 sand trays in my office, all different types of sand trays that go with the figurines for sand play therapy. There's EMDR, of course, that was developed in the 80s. It's really kind of come into a lot more into that, which is again a top-down, bottoms-up approach. So there's a lot of creative modalities that have come in that. Another one really is, again, and I think it goes back to traditional versus holistic approach, right?
Okay.
So traditional, again, would be that psychotherapy, sending them to a psychiatrist, that type of thing. Whereas there's this holistic side. And that's where my heart is, really, is that holistic side. And so you have where it's helping people and understand that your mind, your body, and your spiritual all are interconnected, and they all affect one another. And in order for you to be truly healthy, you got to deal with all of them. Right? You've got to deal with your mental, and understand that your mental is going to affect your spiritual, it's going to affect your body, and all of those things in combined. So that's really important. I mean, just to kind of give you an example, when we look at, for instance, the foundations of health, right? You've got sunlight. Sunlight is vital for us, not only for our circadian rhythm, getting that sunlight in our eyes early in the morning, but also helps with mood elevation. We probably know that already, right?
Yeah.
You've got sleep. Sleep is this bi-directional thing where mental health affects directly sleep, and sleep directly affects mental health. So if one of them is off, then the other one is off.
They're both off, yeah.
And we know that sleep is not only recuperative, but if you don't get enough sleep, what happens? You get anxiety, you have mood issues, concentration issues, a lot of just, I mean, you can end up getting sick, right? So sleep is vital for us. Exercise is another, right? We know that aerobic exercise is great for your heart. It's great for your lymphatic system, so it flushes out all those toxins, which is really good. But then you have your anaerobic, which is more of that, resistance training, the weightlifting. That's actually really helpful for stress release, for resiliency in stress, and mood elevation as well. If you think about it, when you're exercising and you're tensing and releasing, which again is helping your body to relax, right? Proper nutrition, right? I mean, we all know that nutrition is important, but did you know that it directly affects our mood?
Yeah.
Right? Food affects mood, right? And so if you're not eating properly, if you're eating lots of sugars and refined carbs and stuff like that, that's going to affect your anxiety level, your mood. Of course, it causes all this inflammation, which again causes all of those things as well. So trying to get your proper nutrition, water intake. I was shocked to know. I mean, I guess I should have known. We know that we're 70% water, give or take, right?
Yeah. It's like, okay.
But
I have a lot, right? I don't need to drink too much.
I
have a lot.
Yeah.
I already got a lot of water. What do I need more?
Yeah, exactly. Unfortunately, we're using water for everything in our body, right?
Yeah.
So that's why we need. I mean, in my training, it was that 50% of your body weight in water in ounces a day. That's a lot, right? Why is that? Because water, if your brain, for instance, gets dehydrated, you can get mood issues, you can get concentration issues. You have if you're not drinking enough water, it can cause cortisol to spike because your body's going into a kind of a
Oh, yeah,
stress
like a fight or
state,
flight. Yeah, yeah, you're going into
right?
a
Fight
stress
or
state.
flight, right? And of course, that
Oh,
also
wow.
that'll then, if you're in fight or flight, it also holds on to weight in your body, so you can't lose weight. So there's a lot of stuff with water. Um, there's dealing with your ants. I like calling them ants, A-N-T, automatic negative thoughts, right? So
Okay.
we got lots of ants going on in our body, in our brain, right? These negative thoughts that we have, helping our emotions to, and controlling those emotions for it to be a gauge, not a guide, right? So we
Yeah.
don't follow those emotions. We use it as a gauge to how we're doing, right? Breathing, that diaphragmatic breathing, getting to that parasympathetic state
Mm-hmm.
really helps. And of course, the most important, really, I think, is that spiritual side, where we know there's been tons of studies on your brain and how that affects your brain, how it affects your mood, how it affects everything in your life. So these
Yes.
are some things that I think that when you help your client understand all of these things, that, you know what, this when you get these things down, you're going to
Yes.
be in a lot better place. And then of course, maybe not even needing medication, because that's another thing actually with changes. A lot of medications now, it's more like people are like, you know what, I need something different. Let's try herbs. Let's try homeopathy. Let's try all these different things.
Yeah.
Right. And I
Right.
think that's really good too. So
Yeah, this is a part I think when I was looking over the work you're doing and how you articulate it, this whole full approach, right? The full human approach. And then you can strip, I agree. Once you pull all that away, you'll probably find you get a lot of people off some meds and you start to get down to the core. You get to the real, I mean, how as a professional, how do you find the root cause? How do you truly help somebody if there's all of this, opaque stuff in the way, right?
yeah,
Like they're eating carbs and sugar. They eat a lot of drive through. Like, okay, well, that definitely is not good, right? They got a bad boss. They're sleeping five and a
yeah,
half hours.
yeah,
Exercise. Yeah, when I was 16, I had a gym class. Yeah. So how do you
yeah,
get through all these, how do you get through all these layers to find out the real issue, right? What they're really, the emotional part of what they're dealing with, and
yeah.
not the garbage that's being created.
And I think that's the amazing thing about how we're created. You know, God created us to heal ourselves, to heal our bodies.
Mm,
You know, He gives us these resources, whether it be herbal or, whatever it
yes.
might be, to be able to support our body in that healing. I know that for a fact, personally, because I've known this. I have an herbalist friend of mine, actually two of them that I know, for 20, 23 years or so. I go see
Okay.
them. I send my clients to go see them, because it really helps them to understand, hey, look, this is something that you can use to help support your body, in that healing process. So,
Hmm.
it's that multi-prong approach, right?
I mean, a lot of drugs are just mimicking nature, right? There's a lot of drugs that really what they're
Yeah.
doing is essentially mimicking things that are in nature. Yeah, I think the food thing for me is one of the biggest. You know,
Yeah.
COVID exposed a lot of issues, but I think it's been a long time coming, and for certainly, I think you look at the obesity crisis in America, and this is that's a mental health crisis on the side, because it's a full on unhealthy obese person, but guaranteed on the side to serve that up, you're going to have some mental health issues. There's no way
I,
around it.
yeah. I think that's a really good point about the obese, because I didn't mention this, but really organic meats are the best, just because all the rest has a lot of growth
Yeah.
hormones in it and other things that are going to cause a lot of issues, a lot of
Yes.
estrogen increase for men, which
Yep.
again is an issue. So
Yeah.
it's
You can see it.
it's really important. It really is.
You can see it in some men's bodies. They've been exposed to estrogen. It's the only explanation.
Yeah.
Yeah, the diet. I think
Yeah.
one thing for me, the one thing that
Yeah.
I did not know, I always thought I was pretty well educated on diet, but surprisingly not. Seed oils has turned out to be an absolute game changer for me. Seed oils and really and super the refined carbs and getting,
Yeah.
but just my own gut and inflammate. Like I didn't like I always thought like, hey, your guts, like really,
Hmm.
like it inflamed. I didn't really get that it actually was inflamed, that it actually was a real, like, your body's swollen. There's a reason your tummy is puffy. It's because you're
Yeah.
eating poison. You actually have poison in your body. It's
Right.
kind of it's just a small
Yeah.
reaction, but it's a really good tasting poison, to be fair. But I have got out.
That
I
true.
mean,
True. I mean, that's why you have a lot of,
Doritos are pretty fucking delicious. Let's face it, right? I mean, you put a Dorito in your mouth, and that is science right there. There's not an ounce of
it's
food.
interesting you mentioned it's interesting you mentioned Doritos because Doritos are one of those ones that has the dyes in it, and
Yes.
kids that have ADHD, that can cause a lot of aggression if they eat Doritos. So not in all of them, but in a lot of them they can.
Yeah,
Just from the red
Doritos is
dyes,
it's
from the
crazy.
different
Yeah.
dyes.
Well, and they show all the dyes. The dyes are in every gummies, gummy bears, drinks, Skittles, M&Ms. All those places have got all the red dyes.
Yeah.
Yeah, the diet thing is a real trigger. I think it's got to make, like, the job is going to be interesting because a lot of things have changed. Why people come.
Yeah.
25 years ago, the reason somebody would come see you and the reason someone would come today, boy, there could be a lot of different root causes.
Yeah. I think for the future though, I think that there's,
Yeah.
things have come a long way. I think the whole mind, body, spirit approach is kind of budding and kind of working. I know, some people that are doing that as well, but wanting to shed that light on for counselors and psychologists and psychiatrists, especially, because I think psychiatrists would be really helpful in knowing that integrate. And there are certainly some good integrative psychiatrists out there. But you think about the schooling, right? Our schools haven't really talked about some of these things that we know now that are very important, right? That treating that whole person, right?
Yes, I agree.
So doing something in the schools, right? And then I think the biggest thing, honestly, is, again, going back to what we believe and what we put our hope in is, or should I say who we put our hope in, affects everything, our mind, our body, our spirit, and so for me as a licensed Christian psychologist, I think it's important for me to be able to share that with people, to know where that hope comes from, right, in Christ and so forth. And so I think that that's something that we're designed to worship, right? Worship God, but yet because of our brokenness, we have this, we worship everything else, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
And
you
so
get
that
around to
causes
God
issues,
later.
obviously, if we're right.
On Sunday. I'll get around to that on Sunday.
Yeah, exactly. I'll get out. Yeah. He's good for me on Sunday. The rest of the week, I'm good. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of funny.
Yeah.
One of the in my Jar podcast, I have one of the questions is, why do people always leave houses of worship smiling? And, I get some great answers.
That's a good question. That's a good question.
That's a great question, right? Because you're like, even the atheists, right? Even people I interview that don't believe in God and people who believe in, something, it is always kind of like, yeah, actually, I don't think I've ever left a house of worship. I mean, if I had tears, it was probably like happy tears, but people generally leave in a good, elevated mood.
Yeah.
One of the interesting things, I wrote my book called Dear God, and the last chapter the last part of the book, I call it the book 4, is really, the first book is book of self, then it's book of others, being you and another person. Then it's kind of the book of all, meaning, humanity. And then the last book is, God. And it's interesting. The people that I have found, that chapter, the 3 letters in there is faith, hope, and prayer.
Mm-hmm.
And I found people with little faith, with real little belief, any grounding and kind of a strong belief in something bigger. Right? It didn't have to be God per se.
Right.
Without faith, there's very little hope.
True.
It's a really weird, and I never designed the book like that. I never had any kind of advanced thinking, but it was just an observation as I met people. Faith and hope are in just so interdependent, and without one, man, I mean, if you don't have faith that there's something bigger than you, something helping you, something that's cheerleading for you on the sidelines and giving you all the tools to be successful in life, whatever that looks like. If you don't have that faith, that man, hope in your own life to get through the tough times, very difficult.
Oh, sorry,
that's a tough life.
Okay. Yeah.
You're back.
I didn't hear most of that, but that's okay. It's okay.
So tragic.
I know, it's terrible. I know.
It's okay. I'll repeat it a little bit. It's basically, in my interviews, I've seen that faith and hope are so interdependent.
Yeah.
And, if you don't have faith that there's something bigger than us looking out for us, then, man, hope it's self-manufactured.
I think that
you have to, only you can find it.
If we go back to the beginning, that's kind of a good tie-in to looking at when I mentioned before about it being a pandemic now instead of a crisis. But after COVID, if you think about COVID itself, the virus wasn't the problem; it was the lockdowns, right?
It was
the lockdowns.
It was the humans. It was the humans.
Yeah. Well, it was. Well, no. What I'm saying is not that. What I'm saying is that because we were locked down, we are created to be in relationship with other people.
Yeah.
That's how we're created, to be in connection with other people. Because we could not do that for at least a year, maybe more, there was a lot more depression, a lot more anxiety, a lot more hopelessness and loneliness. And that's what kind of elevated that. I've seen so many people post-COVID that they didn't have social anxiety before. Now they do. Why is that? Right? Because it's getting back out there. Right.
Wow.
The Gen Z population, I heard upwards of 90% of them are anxious and depressed. I mean, that's a huge statistic.
I don't doubt that stat. I've been interviewing some interns around that age group. It's very interesting. Some of the social behaviors aren't, getting on a Zoom call and not turning your video on.
Right. Right.
I mean, that's dead on. Yeah. I mean, for me, that's a dead sign you are not well. Like, you can't even turn your computer on, like, for a video. I mean, that's super anxiety. I feel for those, we really messed that up. It was not our best human moment, COVID.
No, probably not.
Probably not our best human moment. I hope we figure it out. I think most people have figured it out that, maybe the government isn't maybe apparently government leaders are not the smartest in the pack. Maybe the kids that ran for high school president actually in the end are really idiots, and, we're led by mostly idiots. That's our own fault. We get the leaders we deserve, right?
That's true. That's very
You
true.
know, boy, we really we must have been very bad because we've got some really bad leadership. Um, yeah, I hope we can do better as humans. What do you think? You know, I think we covered quite a bit of the stuff we wanted to talk about. What's that last piece? I think is a little bit about what do we need to do? What do we need to change? I think. Is
Yeah,
there
I
anything
talked
else you
to,
wanted to
yeah,
cover?
I think there's a little bit more.
Yeah.
I think when you look at educating, one thing
Yes.
that really got me into this. I mean, I've always kind of been a holistic type person, but it wasn't until I took this training that was more of that mind, body, spirit thing. I'm like, this is really, and you know, with culinary and with sleep and with all these different. I'm like, wow, that's amazing. You know, everybody needs to know this. You know, and
Yes.
so I think going, and that's one thing that I want to do is I want to go and I want to share with other counselors and psychiatrists and psychologists why this works, right? I
The
think
why.
that's an important thing. Yeah, the why this works, because a lot of
Mm.
times you think, oh well, you know, that's crazy
It,
talk or whatever it is, right?
yeah.
But
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think that something that I don't think many of my profession do is look at how that body piece, not the body piece, I would say when I say body, I don't mean like the somatic stuff like breathing and vagal stuff. I'm talking about like things that your body does, whether it be some type of, if you have a skin issue, you know, that's a digestive
Hmm.
issue. That's the root
Yes.
cause. It's a digestive, right? So looking at those things, looking at, and so referrals, right? What referrals are we going to do? I refer to chiropractors. I refer to massage therapists. I refer to dietitians and nutritionists. I refer to herbalists, right? Because all of those in conjunction are going to help me help
Yes.
them,
Yep.
right? And so who am I to say, oh, look at me, I can help you and just me? No, that's ridiculous, right?
I
I
love that.
need other people to come alongside to help me help someone that I know is hurting, right?
Mm.
Trauma is such a huge piece, and it affects your mind, it affects your body, and it affects your spirit, right? So
Yeah.
that's one thing I work with a lot is trauma. And so
Okay.
you may think in your mind, hey, I'm fine, but your body is reacting. You know, you're sitting down at the computer doing nothing, and all of a sudden you get tense. Why did I do that? It's because there was some sort of trigger that happened in your body that is still there that needs to be worked through, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's a paradigm shift in a way to look at these other referral sources that are going to be just as valuable.
Yeah. I was likening it. My analogy of having, you know, for you trying to treat somebody, trying to help somebody in pain. And like I said, there are these kind of like opaque veils. You know, the diet's not really good, the stress at work. And so, you know, you're trying to clear those to get through the trauma, to kind of work through the, you know, the stuff that you know how to do, the other parts that you know how to do. And yeah, to get a patient, all those components kind of getting lined up, it's just got to be magical to see the change.
It is. I mean, when I've sent, because it's funny, we right next door we have a chiropractor. They're great. I go see them actually as well. Um, but um, but you know, I'll send them over there, and then they'll come back and go, man, I feel so much better, right? Just after doing some chiropractic stuff. You know, a funny story. I won't say a funny story, but just to kind of I guess bring it home. I was in a really bad car accident 4 years ago. Somebody T-boned me, gave me 3 herniated discs, um, and and so I went through chiropractic. I went through massage stuff. I went through a lot of other stuff to kind of help me work through some of that stuff. Um, and then I would say It was earlier this year. I was driving home with my family from vacation. My older daughter drove separately. She was coming home, and she was ahead of us, and she was already pretty much at home, and she ended up getting in a little fender bender. She called us and she's like, "Hey, I'm okay." The car was fine. Everything was fine. It was just, not a big deal. It was, just nothing, right? And I'm like, okay, great. I hung up the phone. I'm still driving. I hung up the phone. My whole body got tense. I got a headache. I started getting the same issues that I had when I first got the accident.
Tingling
So to tell you that your body remembers these things, right? Your body remembers these things. And so getting that out, is important. And so, and I think that's really important for us as therapists as well, because, I'll just kind of put this caveat in here, but therapists need therapists too, right?
Of course. First, I would imagine even more than anybody.
That's important because we have to work on our own stuff. So,
I mean, that's
we see a lot of stuff,
story.
And we hear a lot of stuff.
I could say, Greg, that I've only done 320 interviews. That's probably, that's probably a couple months work for you guys to see 300 people. But wow, I mean, some of the stories, the things that I've heard are shocking, are mind-boggling. What humans can do to each other. And I'm sure you've heard some horrific stories. People are pretty resilient in the end. Somehow we kind of come through it, and somehow people use it to their best advantage. At some point, they're able to once they're able to work through everything. Boy, humans are pretty resilient and pretty amazing. The ability to look back on some of the stuff that's happened to people and to have a positive attitude and to empower and to use it in your life's work. It's wild. Humans are really amazing, actually. Dr. Greg, thanks so much for being a guest. Thanks for taking time.
And the great thing is once
go ahead.
Hey, you're very welcome. I was glad to be here. I was just saying, I'm glad to be here. I appreciate you, and I appreciate your podcast. Yeah.
Thank you, Doc. Thanks, Doctor. Thanks everybody for listening and supporting Mental Health Today, the JAR Foundation. If you want to be a sponsor for this program, you can find us on all the normal kind of channels. And great help is to just give us a little rating wherever you're listening to the show on. Just write some notes and share the show with other people, especially people in the business, professionals, because that's who we're really trying to get more of those folks involved and on the show. Thanks again, Dr. Greg. Thanks again, everybody. Doctor, hang on for 30 seconds.
Thank you. All right.
Oops. Hold on. There we go.
Yeah, loose, baby.
We're about to go and make this vessel with these great professionals in public glass. We're not part of the community, but we're from the outer family of glassblowing. Yeah, we're going to go make a magical giant jar with optic lenses so that if you turn it, it changes all the time. So if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change.